So I have a question for you.
Okay.
What are you afraid of?
What am I afraid of? Silence. I knew I was going to bring this. No, when I say silence, I mean, I think I thrive on, my mind is always going, and I need something to kind of occupy and keep it going. And when I say silence, I sort of almost just mean maybe
More like stillness.
maybe when I'll take it back. I think what scares me is sort of lack of purpose for me personally, lack of being necessary. I'll use my children as a specific example. My children I've got one in college and my youngest is a freshman in high school. And, so when you have a child that's first born, there's a need that's there, a very palpable physical need. And that turns into an emotional connection that eventually turns into sort of a slight distance, which then turns into the teen angst, which is like, a real thing. It's just separation, which then turns into, there's not real, like my children at the ages they are, they don't need me. And so as hard as need is, it's also purpose. So I guess if I live long enough, I will exist in a life where I'm no longer necessary, no longer helpful. I'll be living off of the fumes of that podcast that I taped with Jason Tierney. People will be like, "Hey, weren't you that guy who did that?" And then they'll say, "Cool, can you move out of the way?" That's the thing. I mean, I think that it doesn't scare me necessarily, but I know it's my destiny. Meaning there's sort of the memento mori thing, which is slightly different, which is, constantly acknowledging the fact that you're going to die, which I think is super healthy.
Talk about that for a minute, because a lot of people aren't familiar with that process.
It's literally, I think it comes from Stoicism, but it literally is this constant, people will carry coins around in their pockets, and they'll put their hand in the pocket and they'll rub on this, which basically just is an acknowledgement of the fact that I'm going to die. And when you say that, it's not morbid. It's actually how I view it is I'm fleeting on this earth, and someday I won't exist. Therefore, today am I? But basically, hopefully, not today is the day that the end is coming for me. So today, am I doing everything that I should be doing, can be doing? It's almost like, am I making this a meaningful day?
Yeah. Because you should live as if though. I mean, it's like Shawshank Redemption, right? Get busy living or get busy dying. And it's that reminder, that constant reminder that you could leave at any moment. And right now, are you doing what's most meaningful, most purposeful in your life? Because if it's not, then you should probably, you didn't die right now.
Yeah.
So you've got an opportunity to change it.
Correct. Yeah. And for me, because I think about everything, this is something that I think about, and I'd say, yeah, I'm absolutely 100% exactly. I'm where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and doing it in the way to the best of my ability. And I'm, from a purpose standpoint, still necessary, still needed, and making a significant impact. Now, that's how I choose to believe it. Somebody else will have their own opinion on, what they think I should be doing or shouldn't be doing. But I think, I guess though, I go back to, I've had the privilege of living a life with very clear purpose. And that's a beautiful thing. So back to your question, I'd say, there will be a moment in time, it could be a long, to me, I always view it as the kind of the last phase. That last phase is likely to, if I'm lucky enough, I will live long enough to have a phase in my life where I'm no longer actively useful. I will be reflecting on the life that I used to have or had. And while when I say it scares me, it does scare me. That really does. I mean, like it's scary in a, how am I gonna do in that? Because I really, I thrive on being necessary and having purpose.
Yeah. So in some organizations, what people do in leadership roles is they create situations where there's always a need for them, and that's limiting to the organization
Right.
most of the time.
Absolutely.
So how do you ensure that you don't do that?
I'm trying I'm trying to create the exact thing that I said scares me the most. So specifically for me, how I view it, how I view, and we'll talk about Advent specifically. We could talk about my family too. Is what's my job at Advent? How I view anything at Advent that requires my hands to be on it is fundamentally broken, and we need to figure out a way to fix that. I need to have my hands off of everything. Now, I'm CEO of this organization, so eventually what that means is I should only be spending my time on strategy, on culture, on very specific things. So there's still a need that's there, but that need it needs to recede over time. The organization needs to be strong enough to be able to stand and act on its own. I have the same mindset with my children, if that makes sense. So what does success look like for my children is I've instilled in them the right attitude and whatever mindset and values, so that I'm like this, and really, and then they're going to live their lives, and I'm no longer truly necessary. I'm kind of nice to have around, hopefully, and but I'm not necessary. I'm not necessary for them, and as sort of sad as that is, that's the sort of the natural course of life.
It's a cycle. It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing, and to be able to have, I go back to, and it's a beautiful thing to have had those moments in time, because life is fleeting and because I won't be here anymore. So then my children, in that example, will hopefully be able to do the same sort of thing. So one day they too can become useless and die. So that that's that cycle of life. But I view business and organizations are very much the same thing. And so Advent is in this sort of adolescent phase, I'd kind of consider us right now. And, what's healthy for the organization is, like I said, my hands off of it. And so I'm working. That's my constant work.
We're kind of taking that comparison though. I mean, in a practice, in a business, if you're a leader where the entire organization is dependent on you to make decisions, to take actions, to get things done, that's like having the 55-year-old kid still living at home, living in the basement, sucking off the teat while playing Madden in the basement and
Exactly.
smoking a vape.
Yes. Yeah. That kind of guy.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And there's a natural tendency to want to continue to make yourself, to keep that attachment, to maintain that.
Sure.
To me, it's active work to sort of do the opposite. I'm trying to, when you think about, even when you think about our clinics, that's what we do. Advent started in one clinic. I was the one doc that was there. And, how do you say it? People didn't come to Advent. They came to see Dr. Kandula.
Sure.
They picked the phone up and they said, Dr. Kandula's office. That was for years, long time.
Yep.
And that's fine. I mean, we were called Advent, but people would just say, hey, Dr. Kandula's office. So I think the greatest magic trick I ever performed was taking a practice and a business that was based around one individual, this guy, and disappearing myself as a practitioner. I still practice, but it's more of a nice to have. I'm certainly not a must have. And recreating myself in the form of my surgeons and my medical ENTs, my PAs and nurse practitioners. That was a conscious thing. So that was something I did after reading E-Myth, after going through Traction. And it was like, no, this is what I need to do for the good of the organization and to be able to reach as many people as possible. On the flip side, I love seeing patients. I love operating. There's so much of that I loved and still love, but I'm needed in a different place in the organization. I mean, in order for the organization to grow, I've got to get out of its way. And another way to think about that is me. If I'm a constraint, I talk about my hands and my fingers. Is if I'm constraining a person, a department, whatever it may be, I have to be able to be aware enough to acknowledge that and then whatever. Let's smash that vase so things can grow.
Yeah. Why do you drive a Tesla?
It's a fun car to drive.
What's fun about it?
It's it caused me to step out of my comfort zone. Like the first Tesla I got was in 2018, and people kind of forget. It's an like when you think about. I'm actually in the middle of Elon Musk's most recent biography, and so and they're talking about like the sausage factory, like what was like when I was listening about Tesla in 2018. Tesla in 2018 was super sketchy, super duper sketchy. And so for me, one of the reasons I got a Tesla back then was that it was like, this is going to be uncomfortable. Like, like even that there's sort of what range anxiety, like, like, what am I going to do? Like, they don't, how am I going to do that? And so that's part of the reason. Part of the reason it's fun to drive. I don't drive that much, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't like a big, I do feel like it is definitely, I'm the walking stereotype for a Tesla driver. In the medical community, Indian physician Tesla driver is like a
one and the same.
That's
the
thing.
Trinity.
It's like check. So as much as I hate being a stereotype, I'm not going to not do something just because it's stereotypical. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So
So you're halfway through the book.
Yes.
What view that you previously had of Elon Musk has changed as a result of what you've read?
I kind of already knew that. I've read a couple of the other things written about in books and things, and I already knew this. But I think there's a sadness to his life that isn't well understood or appreciated. So that's where as we're halfway through, it really is kind of those moments of silence in his life as he's been married and divorced and whatever, cohabitated and all that kind of stuff. But his life has been fantastic, brutal, all of those things. The author that wrote this book, Walter Isaacson, he teaches at Tulane. My eldest daughter goes to Tulane. And so I was down there at a book conference last year. Walter Isaacson was being interviewed by Kara Swisher. Kara Swisher is a journalist out in Silicon Valley.
Tech journalist, yeah.
So she's interviewed everybody, everybody, Steve Jobs and, Elon Musk and you name it. So they were talking about, the book hadn't been released yet. So she was so Walter Isaacson basically was Elon Musk's shadow for years.
Yes.
He would go, he'd be there, all these different places. And that's what the book is. That's how he wrote the book. So she framed it. Kara Swisher was talking to Walter Isaacson and basically framing it like Elon Musk is a horrible person. And almost like anything that he's done good for the world has been negated by what a horrible person he is. That was literally kind of basically what she said. And Walter Isaacson, who did Steve Jobs' biography, right. he too knows all these people. He took the counter, which is Elon Musk is an imperfect person who net has. Done greater good for the world than his flaws would cancel out. So the world is better off for having Elon Musk in it and having the changes that he's created and versus having. I think she was sort of going in this place where it would be better if he was a nicer person and didn't say some of the things that he said. And that's possible. And Walter Isaacson said, no, it's not. And they said the same thing. They said the same thing about Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Is Steve Wozniak is a super nice guy. Mm-hmm. Would Apple be Apple if Steve Wozniak was running it? Hell no.
And Wozniak has said no about that very
absolutely.
Issue.
Yeah. It gets to there's a people can't handle the truth, and you don't have to be an asshole, but you kind of do at times. Meaning, you don't. Elon Musk is it goes beyond. I don't know how you say this.
I mean, I read the book too.
Okay,
and certainly it's a recurring. There are several recurring themes in the book, and I guess as in his life.
Sure.
One of them is he has a tendency to treat people very harshly. Mm-hmm. And these people being, sentient beings they're upset
Sure.
by it. He doesn't even remember that it happens. He attributes some of this to Asperger's.
Right.
True. I don't know. He's self-diagnosed.
Self-diagnosed. Right.
But over the years in my career, what I've seen is that very driven people that have a nearly a singular focus or a primary focus, it's well above the others. It's that drive that makes them successful. It's that focus on attaining that goal or those goals that make them successful. And oftentimes that comes at others suffer as a result of that. And I remember at one point in a past life where I got a review, a performance review, and all of this glowing praise, right? All these things that I did well. And there are two pieces of constructive feedback, and this one has left a scar on me.
Really? Okay.
Because one of them was he wears ties all of the time, which can make people feel that the workplace is too formal.
That's a scar you're still, or?
And the other
Okay.
was sometimes when he's trying to get things done, he can be short with people. Now, that's true. And oftentimes, I mean, you've read and experienced enough of this, our worst traits are really positive things just run amok, right? So if we can sort of temper them a little bit, but when you pull it back too far, then you're no longer this A+ all-star performer.
Sure.
It can't come at the cost of the performance. And so whether it's Asperger's, whether it's assholeness, whatever it might be, I would side with Isaacson here. That is he a jerk? Is Musk a jerk to many people many times? Sure. Is it a net positive what he's contributed to humanity? Absolutely. The key takeaway from the book for me was I read, you mentioned that you read some other books about him. I read that Ashley Vance biography.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And that was actually what made me want to get a Tesla. So
Okay.
I read that probably around 2018.
You might actually, how do you say that? That actually rings a bell to me because I didn't realize that until you just said it. But I think, anyway, but continue.
So my wife wanted to get a Tesla because she's like, oh, it's a cool, sexy new car, and I want to get one. I don't care about cars. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I read that biography, and I was like, I want to support what this guy's doing. This is incredible, What I did, so what that Vance biography didn't do was it didn't key into as much of his childhood
Correct.
as this Isaacson biography did,
right.
which I think the Isaacson that background in the Isaacson biography gives a lot of color to help explain
Sure.
how he got to be
Who he is.
how he
is. Yeah.
But the other thing that I didn't get from the first one that I've my biggest takeaway from the Isaacson biography was that so many of these developments, so many of these breakthroughs that his companies have experienced were a direct result of his involvement and his pushing
Absolutely.
and his expertise. So I sort of thought, oh, he's really smart. Even after reading that first book, I thought, well, he's a brilliant guy. He's a really smart guy. He's a fairly savvy business person.
Yeah.
And he's got an ungodly level of, self-confidence.
Sure.
And he's fortunate that he's aligned himself with a lot of other really smart people that can make these breakthroughs. And what I saw time and again in that book is that he's surrounded by the smartest people. And they say, this can't be done. He goes and he learns as much as he can about whatever this is. And then he comes back with a novel approach.
Sure.
And says, do this.
Yep.
They say, no, it can't be done. Can't be done.
Yeah.
And he says, do it. And every once in a while, it just doesn't happen often in the book, but there are a few times where he says, look, I'll jump on the grenade. If it fails, it's my fault.
Absolutely.
And there are times when it does fail.
Yep.
But more often than not, it succeeds. And this team of engineers, of scientists, of brilliant minds, experienced minds go, oh my gosh. So the fact that this one individual is this force of nature is incredibly inspiring, because I'm no Elon Musk. I'm not in Mensa. I'm not creating rockets.
Right.
None of that. But the fact that one person can make that much of an impact can have such an effect on electric cars. I mean, the only reason Ukraine is able to fight Russia right now is because of Starlink.
Yeah.
So there's a gaggle of examples we can cite. But the fact that one person has made such an immense contribution to humanity, and where it will likely be in 100 and in 300 years, is incredibly inspiring.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I'm forgetting the term he uses, but the thing that he does over and over again, the thing that he's done over and over again are these, he will, again, there's a word that I'm just blanking on, where it's like this brutal, like he is sleeping in the factory and they are
going hardcore.
The going hardcore is a phrase around, but exactly. We'll just use that as the concept. But going hardcore, what Elon Musk has done over and over again is he goes all in. Like every time if there's something that he believes in, it's chips all in, and then he goes hardcore with a team that he's pushing to a place that they didn't know that was possible. That was basically, without him, it would have been impossible. And sometimes he asks the impossible, and the impossible sometimes doesn't happen.
Sure.
But yeah, that's that thing that he does is a byproduct of all of the ingredients, the good ones and the sweet ones, the bitter ones. All those things came together to kind of create who he is. And I mean, again, like him, I respect game. And I respect people who do things, and and he's done the hardest things, and he's the funny, I mean, as you read that, he is as more flawed of a human being as flawed, I don't know how you say, he's so joyously human, and joyously petty at times. I think
I know you appreciate his pettiness.
I appreciate his. I personally don't feel like I'm not petty in the way that he is, and I didn't have any of the harshness that he's had. But it just makes him human. I mean, I think somebody who could do such great things. I guess to me, it's almost like, I don't know, Da Vinci or you name it. We'll never. There's never going to be a true revealing biography about these people. But I think that the core truth is that. We talked about Taylor Swift before, is there's a person walking around in the world who people will talk about after her time. There's a person walking, really in our time, Elon Musk is on the Mount Rushmore of people that people will be talking about him, moving in a forward direction. But his life too is fleeting. So he too will be laid down someday. And when that happens, kind of like they've done to Steve Jobs, is when that happens, some of these inconvenient truths will likely kind of recede, and they'll put him on a pedestal, and they'll put him up there, and and people will say that he was different than us. He could do things we can't do, and almost there's this glorification kind of a thing. And in my mind, it's like the people on the pedestals. It's fine to have them on a pedestal, but I actually enjoy the flaws in those people, because it basically tells you that anything is actually possible. That they're actually, honestly, Elon Musk, had more challenges than I had. And so forth and so on. But I'd say that's the thing that I think everybody looks at other people and think they have something. Or anybody who's sort of successful, they had something I didn't have. And maybe it's true, but I'd say they also had a whole lot of baggage that they've been carrying around too, likely.
Yeah, I think what you just said, though, it underscores the fact that there's always this revisionism that takes place after we croak, after we move on.
Right.
So we have a tendency to canonize people and put them on this pedestal, and then they're after. But after they're there long enough, then we resurrect those flaws.
Yeah.
Sometimes we amplify those flaws, and then we topple the statue.
I guarantee you, I am doing things that in 100 years or 50 years, nobody's going to think about me in 100 years or 50 years. But if they did, they would be sort of ashamed. As an example, you're a vegetarian, correct?
I don't eat meat. That's correct.
Is that a vegetarian or not a vegetarian? Or is there a different definition? I'm just going to make sure.
I don't eat meat.
You don't eat meat. So, and I don't, do you hate people who eat meat?
Of course not.
It's a little silent. Like, is there no judgment whatsoever?
Zero.
Okay, good. Someday, I believe, I eat meat. I love to eat meat. Yeah. Someday in my lifetime, I believe there will come a point of time where people will be fascinated that people like me existed that actually ate animals.
Yes.
That's going to happen within my lifetime. If I don't have to live that long, but if I just live to be a sort of a relatively normal old man. So I think that's a good example of but in today's age, this is what we do and this is how we live. And, there's nothing, I'm not evil and I'm not special, but it's sort of that same sort of thing. So back to Elon Musk, I'd say when you're reading those chapters, I'm listening to the book, but you're listening to those chapters, I love to go to that place of, gosh, what was it like in Tesla of 2016? And when like basically they were going to go bankrupt and out of business because they didn't have it figured out. Now people just assume, no, this was destined to happen. It wasn't destined to happen. It shouldn't have happened. In fact, none of that, should have been possible. And so people do that all the time. They do that about everything. And to me, those back to the kind of critic concept is, especially people who haven't done anything, find it easy to be, critical of things, but they also sort of assume an ending. When you just go back in time, like nothing out of that was predestined. Nothing. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I've got 2 Teslas now, years later.
All right.
Got a Cybertruck on order.
Do you really?
Yeah. And I've got to see where I'm at in the queue, so I got to run.
We got to go. You got to get that truck rolling.
Keep it rolling.
Here you go. Obstructive sleep apnea is a throat issue 100% of the time. Almost always the nose is impacted. If you cannot effectively treat those areas, you shouldn't be treating patients who have those issues, or you need resources to help you.